Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Friday, September the 10th, and this is Todd Nielsen with Clocktower Advisors. Talk about your community, and I'm really glad you're here. I hope that there's maybe some first-time viewers here. This is a little bit of a new topic for me about cryptocurrencies and online communities. And I'll just say up front, I'm a learner in this space. My introduction has been. Um, Really over the past couple of months as I've been working on a project with one of my client companies, Aurora WDC, which is a competitive intelligence firm. We're standing up some online communities regionally in the Wisconsin market, and I think doing some pretty interesting and unique things. Um, Arik Johnson, who is one of the co-founders, has really made cryptocurrencies a priority as part of the community concept. And it's been my introduction to the space, even though I've worked in online communities for quite some time. This is kind of a new world. And even though crypto and NFTs have been around and with us for many years, it's a space that I really have kind of glanced off of and haven't personally done much in. I'm not an investor. I don't own Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of the denominations, although that may change in the near future, because I am really intrigued with the concept, with the platform, and what's there. Um, I've been aware of the technology for many years now. I had some involvement pretty early on with an organization, a grassroots organization in Wisconsin called Advancing AI Wisconsin, that was talking about disruptive technologies and things like the blockchain and machine learning and artificial intelligence. The things that have been buzzwords for some time, but um, I think I had maybe even gotten personally a little bit jaded that they just didn't seem like they were ever going to go mainstream. It didn't seem like these things were ever going to come into play. But I think finally, I'm seeing some things now that, at least from my limited, very subjective perspective, indicate that that the world of cryptocurrencies is really going on strong. There's some interesting stuff happening in 2021 that is moving the space forward. And I think there are some barriers to entry as somebody who's coming in from a new learning perspective and trying to come in with a learner's mindset to understand what the world of crypto is all about. There's some barriers to learning there that persist and are problematic. I think that I think for me, there was a light bulb moment, and I'll share that with you in today's conversation about this. But I'll offer as a caveat up front. So I'm not a crypto expert, obviously. I do know more about the online community space. That's the world in which I live in. So this is me reflecting on some things in that journey so far. I'm not offering best practices, not even offering leading practices. But I'm offering some experiences and ideas that I think may be useful to help someone else get a leg up into the space and into this world. My hope is if anybody's joining that has some knowledge and background around cryptocurrencies or NFTs, that you'll chime in and course correct me if I say anything that is not technically accurate. I'm going to do my best, obviously, but like I said, I'm still coming at this as a relative noob in the space, and I want to get better at it. I think that there are some interesting practical applications of using NFTs, and I'll explain in my own words what I think those are as we go into this today. But I think a lot of these things have not been well applied yet. There are NFT-based online communities that are out there, a number of them, but they're about the NFTs themselves. And I don't know how sustainable that is in the long run. And so, looking at it as somebody that is interested in online communities, I'm trying to think of ways in which these can become, that the use of NFTs in an online community could become more mainstream and more usable over over the long haul, rather than just something that is for a very particular group of investors slash collectors who are grabbing up, um, quote unquote rare NFTs. Probably shouldn't put quotes around. They are rare. They're unique. That's one of the things that makes them NFTs. So, anyways, enough prelude. What I'll say is, if you're joining for the first time, welcome. I'm really glad you're here. I would appreciate that you chime in and introduce yourself, because I'm running solo on this one. I usually have a guest, but I do occasionally do just a me on the screen, talking, musing some things that are on my mind about communities. So, please jump in, drop a comment, tell me where you're from, what your background is. If I don't know you already, if I do know you, I'll say hello. I try to respond to everybody that shows up in the stream. And if you happen to run into this after the live stream, I do continue to check for comments, and I try to respond to everybody who comes in. So thank you. I'm glad you're here. I appreciate it. The purpose of this stream is to talk about online communities, and the kinds of communities that are offline and go online, or the ones that are online and go offline. What is that metaversal role of technology in all of this? And so that's really kind of what this is about. So let's jump in a little bit. I alluded to a little bit earlier, how I got started in the online in the cryptocurrency space. Some work that we're doing with one of my clients around building up some communities for some specific areas of. I'm not going to go into the exact communities yet, because just in respect that they're not launched yet. So again, this is all pre-launch kinds of stuff. But Arik Johnson, who is the co-founder of my client company, Aurora, WDC, had some ideas about incorporating crypto into communities as a concept. And communities online communities as a concept is something that still requires a bit of a leveling up of knowledge and understanding for your average user, although they do instinctively grab it. I think a lot of the technology experiences can be a bit of a barrier to adoption. So adding cryptocurrencies, is another level of understanding or digital literacy that needs to be acquired. So there's a little bit of a communications barrier to what that is. And I see Piper Wilson's on the stream. Hey, Piper, it's good to see you. Welcome. And I see you say cryptocurrency confuses the heck out of me. This is going to be good for me. I think it is. I think it is good for us. And my experience so far, my sense so far is that most of us who are in online community management and mainstream online community management, whether we're working with not-for-profit organizations or branded communities or internal digital communities, I think most of us don't have a lot of grounding in what these are and how they work. So there's nothing to feel bad about. I think we're all at different stages in our learning with it. But the idea, and I see another really cool comment that just popped up here. I'll get to it in a second. The idea of a cryptocurrency is that these are currencies that are independent of your financial institutions, your big banks that are out there. It's currency that is supported by something called the blockchain, which is a distributed ledger, as I understand it. So meaning that the information is stored in a lot of different places rather than on one single secured space. So the idea is that it's security through the duplication of information in multiple places. So it makes it really hard to spoof, really hard to hack and get at. It's not to say that it's unhackable, because nothing is unhackable. But the idea is that there's a level of security and independence for currencies that are created on the blockchain. And so those currencies can be traded for denominations of regular money, like like US dollars or British pounds. So there's an exchange rate that happens. I think a lot of the anxiety around getting cryptocurrencies in place is that uh, I think there's been a lot of news that's confusing about how they work, and of course, the sensational things about the volatility of cryptocurrencies. I don't know if you followed any headlines about. I think it's a South American country. I want to say El Salvador um, has set up its own cryptocurrency now, and they're seeing just wide fluctuations in the value of that new denomination in the market. Well, I'm not talking today specifically about cryptocurrencies, but something else that works on the blockchain, and that would be these things called non-fungible tokens. So my understanding of what non-fungible tokens is that these are unique objects that are not uh, they're not an exchange rate. They're so as opposed to a Bitcoin, which you could exchange one Bitcoin for another, they're identical. Each NFT is absolutely unique in some way or another, and a non-fungible token can be a lot of different things. Commonly, what I'm seeing them as right now is that it's something as simple as uh, a JPEG image, a graphic. Um, it could be a picture of a pet rock. In fact, that is a kind of non-fungible token that has some cachet right now, which sounds a little silly, but bear with me because there's something interesting that we can do with these things in the community space. I'm just going to pause for a second because we've got a couple of interesting comments that are popping in here. So let's see. So I've been missing about a potential intersection between community and crypto for a while, but don't understand the latter well enough to strategize. I thought this might be a good starter for me to help my thinking. I hope it is. Longtime community manager and product manager for a community platform. So I'm coming at it from a similar standpoint. I came in and I said, I know crypto is a thing. I feel like I should know a little bit more about it, aside from that it's the stuff on the blockchain. I've heard of these things called NFTs, but I don't know enough about it. So this has been part of my journey and intersection with it. Miles, let's see, that was I was meant to say musing about the intersection. Yeah, got it. Thank you. Really glad you're here. Welcome to the stream, by the way. And yeah, please keep the questions coming if I'm not clear about something. So I think there's something specific that can be done with NFTs, and in particular with the communities that I'm trying to get stood up with Aurora WDC, my client. We're talking about introducing NFTs as some element of a gamification strategy in the platform. I'm not calling it a gamification strategy. It's an engagement strategy. I don't like gamification as a term because it seems to, in some people's minds, turn it into something less important than what I think it is. And it tends to get people to just sort of dismiss it. But I think that, where for me, the light bulb started going on was to understand, like, what do we mean by these NFTs? And there was an article. I'm going to share it in the stream here. It was up on The Verge, and I just came across it last weekend. And this is actually why I set up today's stream around this. I just popped it up there. That it's called NFTs Explained, and I think for the first time for me, it talked about these things in plain enough language that I was able to follow, what was going on with it. And so I think it's a good first read to take a look at. So I'm just gonna kind of share the article so you can get a quick visual on it. I tried to put it into the comments. I'm not sure if it took or not, but I'm just gonna go ahead and try to pop over here and do a little bit of show and tell. So let me switch the background here so it's a little less distracting. How about that? There we go. So basically, this article by Mitchell Clark was just put up on August 18th. So it's actually really new. It's pretty recent. But it gets into sort of the discussion of, what is an NFT? What does it stand for? Non-fungible just means that it doesn't have any inherent value in itself except for what people attribute to it. But if you're trying to wrap your head around that idea of like, what is an NFT? Oh, I see that it didn't, looks like it didn't post. Let me try this again. I'm just going to try to, I think I had to actually hit play over in LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a little bit weird as far as sharing stuff. There it goes. I think I got it up this time. Excellent. So if you're trying to wrap your head around like, what do you actually mean by this NFT stuff? And I said it could be a JPEG. Here's an example of, this is kind of a Dogecoin. Let me drop to, here's an example of an NFT. So this is an animated GIF. Crazy, right? So there's nothing stopping anyone from right-clicking and hitting copy and paste and having an image like this in their, on their computer, or using it on their profile or something. However, it is really frowned upon in cryptographic circles. If somebody uses an NFT that belongs to somebody else on their profile, that's seen as a really bad gaffe, in very poor form. So I think there's some shaming involved with that. But the idea is if you've bought an NFT, a lot of people on Twitter or other social platforms will use that NFT that they own as an identifier in their platform. So if they've invested, and sometimes the investments in these things can be crazy amounts of money. In US dollar equivalents, some of these NFTs, they'll start at maybe around $200, but they can go up to hundreds of thousands, or even close to $1 million or more, depending on some of them. So there's a little bit of faddishness that seems like is built into all of this, that I'm trying to work out, myself, like why these things are driving so much money. I think it's something that's going to pass, but I'm not deep enough into that community of NFTs to say that it's not going to. But what we're seeing is that there are online communities that have been established mostly on what I would consider non-corporate, interest-based kinds of community platforms like Discord, where you'll have so really kind of gaming platforms almost, where you'll have people that come together to talk about these collections of NFTs. And so for me, the article was helpful because it said, think about NFTs almost as if you might think about like trading cards. What will happen is that a creator will drop a whole bunch of similar sorts of images with different attributes to them. Like there's an NFT world called Bored Ape Yacht Club, where you see like there's different attributes to each of these ape images. And I know this sounds crazy, right? But it's kind of fun what they're doing, that are unique. And so then, depending on the number of unique attributes, there's certain rarity that's built into certain images. They may go for more money if people are purchasing those NFTs. And then they've got the exclusive rights to them, and then they'll go into these communities to talk about who's buying what, or there's discussions that are going around. It's almost like an investor's discussion, but it's around these pieces of art. So it's almost art speculation, I guess. And there's some social status to owning these individual pieces, but it's a kind of a game. It's a game played by these investors, and they're having fun with it. There's things like the Bored Ape Yacht Club, which I really kind of like those. They're pretty neat, and they're going for a lot of money. Or you could look at there's Pet Rocks, which I mentioned to you. Literally, these are rocks, right? But they're images and they're unique. But if you start thinking about this, and I guess this is where I started coming into putting on my community strategy hat, and thinking about how these things can be used. Okay, so we've got these unique graphical images. They don't always have to be graphics. They could be music. They could be URLs. They could be a variety of things. But I'm mostly seeing images right now and thinking about them. So we could take these graphics and use them in terms of use them in terms of gamification, or use them in terms of personal profiles within a community. So awarding some kind of uniqueness, maybe to your community ambassadors, or to your founding members, by giving them an NFT that only they can use, honestly, in the community. Um, there's a certain cachet to that. And then if that member ever leaves the community, they could potentially sell the NFT, if there's some kind of artistic value to that collection. Um, so NFTs can be used as rewards for, or identifiers for people within a community. So you may say, okay, well, what? In fact, this question just came up on the stream. You asked, given that they're so easy to copy, is there any way to validate that you own the original? Yeah, that's why these things are on the blockchain, that you can see a clear line of ownership. So whoever has owned that NFT, that's reflected in the blockchain itself, and so that can be checked. And so if somebody isn't using, or if somebody's using something that doesn't belong to them, they can be called out for it, and it can be verified who actually owns, each actually owns that piece. If you decide to sell that piece later, then you can get some money for that. Or but then it would then be shown, a reflection of ownership would be transferred over to the next person. So, well, Piper, I'm sorry you've got to drop out. Yeah, come back, because I think there's some other stuff that I wanted to share that's pretty cool about this. So that's one way, is to kind of acknowledge people with unique avatars that they can use in a given community to give it, some cachet, some social status, for being in there. But I think there's some more things that can be done. So one of the things that NFTs can be used for is to acknowledge proof of attendance or proof of location. So you take a picture somewhere, you can make that into an NFT and demonstrate that you were at that location, because you're going to have geographical location built into basically whatever picture you take for your iPhone or your Android device. So you can actually build in a proof that you were at a certain place and at a certain time. You attended a meeting live. There's suddenly a way then that can be acknowledged by awarding an NFT and reflecting that within the online community. You attended a webinar. So there's a way to acknowledge who's attended that webinar and get it reflected as an NFT within the community itself. You may say, okay, well, wait, I could assign a badge in my gamification platform to something like that. But I think one of the things that may be uniquely useful for an NFT is that we can then make that NFT worth something more in the community. In other words, if I've accumulated sufficient numbers of NFTs for attending a lot of events, or being involved with those events, I can set almost like a level of influence or clout within the community, so that if I am doing any kind of ideation work, if I'm suggesting changes or updates to that community, if as somebody that would be voting on that, I'm going to put my weight behind it, and I've got a lot of influence that's reflected in the NFTs that are attached to my community member profile. I get more juice to my vote than somebody else that's maybe a newcomer to the community. And so it's a way to weight in a very verifiable way, in ways that I don't think gamification platforms can currently do, to weigh people's influence within the platform. I think there's also a monetization element to this somewhere involved with it. And just gonna quit sharing here. There we go. Come back to that. So I think there's a monetization element involved with this too. So it's one thing if you've created some pretty badges as NFTs and you want to share them with members of a community, use them for branding the community or whatever, use them for clout in the community, to be able to vote for things. I think there's also a play here for leveraging the art community. So what if you had local artists that were able to create these NFTs around a certain theme or a certain branded visual design, but able to create something interesting and unique where we can switch out the attributes and award members of the community with those things. Suddenly, these become things that are more like a art collection, something valuable. One of the things you can build into NFTs is a contract so that the actual creator of an item gets a cut every time that piece is sold. So, what if we had an interesting piece of art that's created as an NFT? It goes into the community. That community member, for whatever reason, decides they want to leave the community and they're going to sell their NFT, or they want to sell it anyways. They can put it up on a marketplace, and there are a number of NFT marketplace platforms out there. OpenSea.io is one of the big ones. I guess it's one of the originals that's out there. So that's the one that I'm familiar with at the moment in my level of learning. But so you could put it out there, and that money that NFT is sold for would then go back to the artist and support the artist. I think too, you could build into the contract for that NFT, and that's all contained within the image, a means to financially support the online community as well. So then there's a monetization element to it. So by selling the NFT, you could send some of that money back to the artist that created it, and you could also be expressing support for the online community itself. So suddenly this moves beyond gamification to something that's a little bit more return on investment for the platform. And it's a way for that person who is selling the NFT to still, even by leaving, to express some support for the platform that they've spent some time in, that they've lived in and worked in. Similarly, I mentioned the Bored Ape Yachts Club a little bit earlier, where you got these images of apes there. One of the things that they're doing that's interesting, and I suspect many other NFTs are experimenting with now too, is if I own that NFT, I could take that image and I could set up an Etsy shop and sell baseball caps and T-shirts or other kinds of branded merchandise on it. And again, because it's built into the NFT, I would get as the artist, as the creator artist, I can get some residuals from that, and I would be able to get maybe some money back into the community itself. So it's a way to brand and drive revenue for the community to help it sustain itself over time as well. So I think that monetization element is kind of interesting. So even though the tokens themselves have no inherent value, they're not a Bitcoin, they're not an Ethereum or an ETH, they're actually something that is based on the perception of value for that item. I think they're things that could give value back to that community. So that's where I am with it. I think that those are the more mainstream kinds of opportunities over time that could take the idea of the NFTs, which have driven their own online communities around the topic of NFTs themselves, and could be generalized to other kinds of community platforms where they could be drivers of value and interest, and help to differentiate different sorts of online communities from each other. And if we have local artists, local voices creating art that can be used in these communities, I think it's a nice way to tie the business world to the arts in a way that it hasn't been before. So I think there's some of the opportunities there. Anyways, I've gone on at some length about this. I really appreciate everybody's questions and comments. I'm still learning here. If you've heard anything that sounds interesting to you and you want to talk a little further, I'd love to chat with you about it. This is an ongoing experiment. We have not set up either of the two communities we've been thinking of about this yet, but these are all works in progress, and we have done some proofs of concept around using NFTs for a variety of other things like raffles as well. And I haven't talked about the ways that you could create some additional rewards once you've accumulated some NFTs that are alike. Maybe they create what you would call a drop of additional NFTs. So it would be like the accumulation of badges. If you get certain badges of different types in a gamification platform that may unlock another badge, something that's even more unique and more interesting that helps differentiate you as a user. So I realize some of this may turn members of your community that has other purposes into kind of art collectors or image collectors. So I think kind of keeping the purity of purpose for those communities is important. But if people can give back to their communities in some way, to artists and creators in their communities in some way, in a way that also supports the online community, I think there's value in that. I think there's maybe some interest in that as well. So tell me what you think in the comments. Would love to hear from you. And again, if I got anything wrong, please set me straight. I will probably be doing more of these in the future on this topic. But in the meantime, I hope that you stay well. I hope that you have an excellent, relaxing weekend and you find it rejuvenating. And I will be back next week. I've got a scheduled stream for next Friday. I'm going to be having Jacob Borgeson from Koros on the show to talk a little bit about what's happening with that specific platform. So going back into the community platform world a little bit more in depth. And I'll be around on social media as well. So hit me up. Thanks for joining in, and I will see you next week.